In 2024, she was selected to be a fellow with the Clean Energy Leadership Institute. Kate holds a Master of Public Administration with a focus in environmental policy from the Evans School of Public Policy and Governance. She holds a Bachelor in Mathematics from Hamilton College. And welcome, Kate.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so first, thank you to Solar Washington for inviting me, and thank you to South Seattle Community College for hosting. So I have enjoyed the Washington Solar Summit for several years now. This is actually the first time in a few years that I have not been in attendance for the entirety of the summit. Though I was looking at your agenda for this morning, and I'm happy that I missed the session titled "What Remains of Federal and State Incentives?" I don't need that kind of negativity in my life, so I'm glad I showed up at this point. To be honest, though, at last year's summit, I could not have told you that I would be in this role, nor could I have foreseen, though perhaps some of you will tell me the signs were very obvious, the challenges that we would be facing right now. So I actually missed this morning and arrived delayed because I was in Olympia leading what was supposed to be the final meeting of the governor's data center work group. So that was created by executive order earlier this year so we could take a hard look in the state at the competing trade-offs of data center growth, their energy usage, their potential environmental and tribal impacts, their tax incentives, et cetera. So as those in this room are probably painfully aware, Washington faces enormous load growth challenges, and that has been exemplified in the data center work group. This probably is not news to you, but regionally, the Northwest Power and Conservation Council has projected that data centers and chip fabrication could add 2.2 gigawatts of electricity load in the Pacific Northwest by 2030. That's their average scenario. Their high growth scenario shows that load increasing to about 4.8 gigawatts by 2030 and 6.5 by 2046. You also may have seen in the Seattle Times, just recently featured the E3 report about more than just data centers that suggests we could see a 1.3 gigawatt power reliability gap in the Pacific Northwest beginning next year. So this situation is not wholly unique to Washington. Some of it is, but many states right now are looking to what we are doing to see how we navigate the growth of data centers, the growth of enlarged load, because they are facing the same challenges. However, though, Washington is dealing with a unique challenge. We have a transmission grid not designed for the growth we have today. We depend on Bonneville Power Administration for 75% of our transmission infrastructure. The lead time required to plan, permit, and construct high voltage transmission lines in Washington is 10 to 20 years, and that number does not seem to be going down. I've also been seeing in my office some Washington counties suggest that building a gas pipeline might be a faster process to serving their energy needs than building a transmission line. And that is a failure of the system. We're facing a historic multi-billion-dollar budget deficit that has worsened with each revenue projection we've received. And you have already discussed today how the federal government just keeps adding insult to injury by rescinding billions of dollars in our state's clean energy funding, clean tech, manufacturing growth, tax incentives ranging from our billion-dollar hydrogen hub to credits for residential solar incentives, solar panels, and electric vehicles. That is not even touching the regulatory rollbacks, the staffing cuts that include hundreds of employees at Bonneville Power Administration. You know, our federal government's stated mission right now is energy dominance, which these days I'm understanding to be like dominance in the WWE sense, as in like a televised spectacle of how we totally dominate our energy grid and in a full knockout session. So why do I say all of these things? I am not up here throwing a pity party, far from it. One, it's a reality check, but two, more importantly, this is an affirmation of the importance of the work that you are doing in this room. Because when I think about the federal context and I pair that with the urgent challenges that we are facing, I know for a fact that we are the adults in the room. All of us in this room, including those outside of it, working towards building renewable energy, creating good paying jobs, advancing tribal energy sovereignty and environmental justice, harnessing affordable power that is not dependent on the whims of a global oil market. That's the vision that we are working towards. It is the difficult but necessary future that adults work on. So now that I have established that we're a room of adults, I hope you agree, I want to talk about another obvious change that has happened in the last 10 months. It's a change that I'm sure that all of us have experienced in different ways, but Governor Inslee's North Star was climate, and he and his incredible staff put Washington on the map globally for climate leadership. Governor Ferguson has different priorities, and he faces uniquely different obstacles while still trying to implement those same climate laws. One example is the governor has staffed his office differently, and that is just to emphasize and restaff in his key priority areas. But as a result, there used to be 2 to 3 of me in the governor's office advancing climate, energy, and environmental justice, and now there's only 1. And that's why I haven't responded to your emails. Had to put that in there. I want to share with you what I've learned from that, though, because that does not mean that the work should slow down. It just means that we have to be more strategic than we used to be. So I'll tell you how to do that. 3 of Governor Ferguson's priorities are labor, affordability, and protecting vulnerable Washingtonians. I think that that's great news for solar energy because it enables all of those things to happen. In my former work at a nonprofit, I spent most of my time talking with climate and energy NGOs, working in my little bubble. And now I am forced to, and it is exciting to work hand in hand with labor and economic development every single day of my job. My economic development colleague actually told me recently that he has never talked or learned more about energy in his life than he has in the last 10 months on this role. So if we're talking about solar energy in the governor's office, it's not just because it's reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It's because it is also creating much needed jobs for our electrical workers. It's protecting communities or tribal nations from emergency weather events by making them more resilient in the face of a potential outage. It's decreasing folks' electricity bills at a time when it feels like the cost of everything just keeps going up and up. By building out the electric grid, we aren't just advancing decarbonization, we're also unlocking economic development opportunities in Central and Eastern Washington. So what I'm trying to say is we can still work towards the same end result, but now I better understand that we have to be working in a broad coalition and we have to be talking about the co-benefits of clean energy if we're going to move progress forward. So the great thing about solar in particular, as you all know even better than I do, is there are so many co-benefits. The momentum is on clean energy side, no matter how many obstacles you put in front of it. So in spite of these innumerable changes, we've made it through that part of the talk, okay? We're moving forward. I'm gonna tell you some positive things. So in the last 10 months, we have taken in all of those facts that I just presented you with, that entire reality check, the learnings, the disappointments, the public spectacle. And here is a sampling of the things that Washington has done with it this year. On his first day on the job, Governor Ferguson signed an executive order to cut down permitting processing times across state agencies. In February, the governor committed his administration to continuing to serve on the executive committee of the U.S. Climate Alliance. In May of 2026, that means that our state will once again take the helm of being the co-chair of the Climate Alliance, demonstrating our leadership on a national stage. In May, the governor signed into law Senate Bill 5445, which removes regulatory hurdles to advancing agrivoltaics and streamlines the permitting of certain distributed solar facilities. In June, our amazing Department of Ecology finished programmatic environmental impact statements for solar, wind, co-located battery storage, and green hydrogen, attempting to streamline that environmental review process so we can accelerate building the clean energy infrastructure that we so require. In September, Commerce announced $41 million in clean energy community grant awards, supporting projects like rooftop solar and battery storage in 22 counties across the state. We have also seen the continued strength of our Climate Commitment Act. This is my favorite one. Just this month, the US Supreme Court declined to hear a challenge of our landmark climate law. Yeah, let's clap for that one. It's the weakest applause ever, guys. The CCA has continued to bring in robust climate and decarbonization funding, and I would like to point out that it is currently one of the only parts of the state budget that has a surplus, not a deficit. We also, in Washington, are refusing to let go of the funding and regulation that the federal government has illegally tried to strip away from us. Our Attorney General's office has filed 8 climate and energy lawsuits alone against the federal administration, including, a week and a half ago, Washington co-led a coalition with 22 other plaintiffs in suing over the cancellation of Solar for All. This is just the beginning. Oh, we'll clap again, yay. So saying all of those things, those actions give me hope that our state is continuing to step up to address this challenge. In that same vein of talking about labor, affordability, and protecting communities, I want to tell you what the governor's office is prioritizing right now, what's landing on my desk. Our state agencies are working behind the scenes, around the clock, to get the existing clean energy projects in the permitting pipeline across the finish line and begin construction before the federal tax credits expire. We are beginning the first of many, many necessary conversations with tribal leaders, which started at this week's 3 days of the Centennial Accord in Ridgefield, Washington, where the governor is opening up conversations about the state's energy growth with tribal leaders to see how we can have a more transparent, ongoing, and meaningful dialogue that leads to action about a path forward on clean energy siting responsibly. The governor is also continuing to prioritize advancing transmission legislation. In 2026, we are hoping to unlock those bottlenecks we are seeing in our grid and allow more clean energy projects to interconnect at a faster rate. We know that transmission is the enabler to much of the climate work we need to do in Washington. So I actually have a lot of hope for this year, and I have this like radical transparency problem. So I can't lie convincingly, so I swear I'm not joshing you on this. I have a lot of hope. Though I cannot count the number of times that I have licked my wounds since starting this job. I have taken so many mental health days, the number of times that I have cried in my office over budget cuts and rollbacks and halting process in the name of this polarized political spectacle. Many of my colleagues and tribal citizens and Washingtonians have had it much harder than I have. So what keeps me in this, and something I hope keeps you in this or you can take away from this, has been finding new and surprising partners to be working with to continue moving the work forward. And also learning on a higher level that just because you can't do something the way that you always used to do it doesn't mean that you can't do it. So even if the coalition looks different than it did before, the messaging is broader than it used to be. Before you could make one argument and the policy would stand, and now maybe you have to make 3 arguments. Even if the federal support now looks like not that, we can still absolutely make progress because we already are, and we have to continue. Thank you. I think I have time for some questions. Nora, oh yeah, you have a mic. I'll do my best.
Hello. Solar continues to be the cheapest and the fastest energy system to deploy globally. Why do we continue to fund fusion?
When you say we, who are you saying is funding fusion?
State of Washington is giving out grants for fusion.
I don't mean to indicate my ignorance, but I am not familiar with fusion grants that have gone out recently, unless that's happening in an agency that I'm not aware of. But I can look into that more.
Okay. Conceptually, solar's still cheaper than fusion and probably will be for the foreseeable future. So it just like, we should have more of a robust solar program than the 30 or the $41 million that you're talking about for commerce.
Great.
Hi, Kate. To your right, Marcus with Cascadia.
Marcus.
I just want to say how lucky we are to have someone like you leading us in the state. That was exactly the sail-filling speech that I was hoping to hear. So thank you for being here and thank you for leading us. My question is very nerdy and complex, but I think you're up for it. We have 2 day-ahead markets coming to Washington State, which is really exciting and changes some of the game. I don't think many of this room has been thinking about this. Why should they?
Oh, why should they be thinking about the 2 day-ahead markets? So the Governor Ferguson and Governor Kotek of Oregon actually sent a joint letter to Bonneville Power Administration early in the governor's administration. I had to twist his arm on that one. It was really wonky for him to sign on to urge Bonneville to reconsider their decision about which day-ahead market they're pursuing. I think one of the reasons folks should care about that is if we have 2 competing day-ahead markets evolving in Washington State, we are going to see a major issue of seams, which will lead to where you have these, oh God, this is going to get way too wonky for me to describe, Marcus. You're going to have 2 overlapping markets on top of one another, and you have different entities operating within each market, which means you're going to lead to higher costs because the administrative burden is way more complex in that scenario than if you have one single day-ahead market. That was the worst way I could have described that, but trying to emphasize that having one thing in one spot usually works better than having 2 things on top of each other in one spot. So that's how we're thinking about it. Our state agencies have been really involved in leading the charge on that work. Yeah.
California and Texas is really taking the lead at virtual power plants, and they'll take up some of the slack. Where are we on virtual power plants here in this state?
Oh, we need to be doing more on that. This is a great topic for our Utilities and Transportation Commission and our Energy Office at Commerce have been looking a lot into virtual power plants and how we incentivize it. That being said, I don't think we have had a reckoning with actual legislative policy on it, to my knowledge. I've heard interest in looking into it from certain legislators in 2026, but they haven't come across my desk yet. I agree with you, though, that we definitely need to be doing more on that.
Hi. So my question kind of goes around the increase in data usage and analysis within the tech sphere and the increased need for energy in that area. I was wondering, one, if you have any knowledge as to how much data centers will be being built in Washington, and if it is any sizable amount, how are we keeping the energy for those centers as renewable as possible?
Yeah. So this is exactly what we've been talking about in the data center work group. And we are actually, the outcome of that process is we are sending a series of recommendations to the governor's desk in early December. Some of the main things we have been voting on and talking about in that group are 1, ratepayer protections. 2, how do we improve load forecasting? So this gets to one of your questions. Right now, it is challenging for our utilities to know how much data center growth will actually come online because sometimes we see duplicative interconnection requests where you kind of have these speculative requests coming. We also don't have a sort of commercial readiness standard when a data center wants to enter the interconnection queue. There's not kind of a confirmation that it will actually be built. So right now what's happening is we're ending up with kind of load forecasts that are a bit speculative, and that's something we are hoping in 2026 we can really nail down a more uniform process in Washington that reduces that impact. In terms of clean energy, this is also exactly what we've been talking about and is one of the reasons I said that it was almost the final meeting, but not quite, because this recommendation is very challenging. We are trying to find a way to incentivize data centers to bring their own clean energy to the grid to help with our power challenges. That being said, it's not the most popular recommendation to put forward in the work group. So the details of that are being worked out, but that's one idea we've had. Another idea that we are talking a lot about is incentivizing things that could potentially reduce the power that data centers bring. So can we increase, or can we incentivize them to be more flexible and bring load flexibility? Or can we incentivize them to contribute to some sort of demand response program for customers? And we're also looking at, how can we incentivize better energy efficiency of the systems, better water efficiency? So all of those things are on the table. The problem that right now is happening is that the existing tax incentive in Washington does not have those requirements, right? You have to meet kind of a bare minimum standard in order to build. I shouldn't say bare minimum, but like you don't have to build clean energy. You don't have to be fully renewable, et cetera. So I'll stop there. I hope that answers your question. Yes.
Jeremy, let me jump in front of you here.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Mason.
Hi, Kate. Mason Rolfe, Olympia Community Solar. I know a lot of folks in this room were really devastated when the attempted pullback of Solar for All happened earlier this year. Can I ask what your and the Ferguson administration's plan is to support folks that can't traditionally afford solar energy or place it on their rooftops because they're not homeowners?
Yes. I cannot speak to specific budget items because the governor's budget priorities have not been set yet, and it's still a work in process. I think what I would go back to in terms of what the governor is doing on this is we are again leaning into affordability and labor. And so policies that promote bringing affordable energy and lowering customers' bills, the governor is interested in looking at. So I can say that that's the way that I'm leaning into it. I know that there are pieces of legislation being put forward in 2026 that address community solar and ideas at lowering these bills, and I'm really excited to look at them with legislators. I just haven't seen the drafts yet. Hi.
Hello. Yes. So with the current budget situation, is there vulnerability in the Climate Commitment Act funding that we don't know about that's being discussed or anything? Or is that funding safe from being rated from outside the program?
Can't answer that question because the governor has not started looking at budget proposals yet. Here's what I can say. There are stipulations in law about how Climate Commitment Act dollars have to be used. Most of those are climate reasons or climate purposes. There are some elements in law that are not just for climate dollars. Right now, the governor's priority has been looking at filling the hole in the general fund. And there have been conversations about, are there things that need to be moved from general fund to CCA that are climate related? But in terms of rating the fund, no, there have not been decisions made about that. All right, if that's it. Oh, one more? No? All right. Yes, there is one more. Okay.
Hi, Ben Schwartz with the Clean Coalition here. In the last panel, one of the things that was mentioned is the issue of land use, and that if we are using single-use renewable systems and on greenfield sites, that's going to take away from Washington's pristine natural lands. So is there an effort to consider actually like valuation of avoiding that land use from energy systems on brownfield sites, on built environments, agrivoltaics, so on and so forth?
You might already be familiar with it, but the most recent conversation I've had with the governor about that was Senate Bill 5445 that I mentioned earlier that he signed to accelerate the permitting of solar that was being built on these previously used sites in a way to incentivize that and incentivize agrivoltaics. In terms of, I think you said land use valuation, I have not been a part of those conversations. I would say the other way that land use is going to continue coming up is in these conversations that the governor is having with tribal nations and tribal leaders. It's not agriculture specific, but it is a question about how best we use our natural lands and where are the best places to be siting these systems. So it's not a very complete answer for you, but it is something that we're definitely looking at. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.